Ladies and gentlemen in the dwindling crowd, we'll move on with Aurelio Picon Lopez, to whom I will now hand the microphone.
Hello everybody. I'm going to try to make this interesting. It's late in the day, has been a long day, difficult subjects. This one is going to be very high level. This is about a realization I had doing my regular job, and I want to share that with as many people as I can. So maybe we have started off snowballing effect and maybe something will change. Okay. First, about me. Who am I? Why am I relevant to talk about this subject or any cybersecurity related subject for that matter? I have, in my background experience, I work for a large corporate in their fusion center as a threat hunter, tracking APTs, so I have knowledge of how they operate, what targets do they are after, what kind of tools they use, the backup tricks, etc. Thanks to my current job at Cujo AI, I have access to a huge data set of 3 billion devices. That's a recent milestone we have reached, that I use to do threat hunting to get additional information that I can retrofit into our solution and made it better. So well, we are very IoT focused. We provide a solution that runs in the end user household. It's, usually the router that gives you the ISP is a very low power device. So we have to be very efficient how we provide that solution. What can we run on device? What needs to run on the cloud? And one of the main focus of our investigations is botnets, because that's what targets the IoT devices. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to put you first in the set of mind that I have when I'm working. I'm going to try to describe the environment. I'm trying to describe an example of my work, and then how things work, and then arrive to the point and what things can we do to make things better. So first, inside of the threat actors, this is probably, for most of you, this is nothing new, at least I hope so. If not, if you're here just because you're a hobbyist, then learn. This is very basic stuff. There are 3 types of threat actors. There are state-sponsored, they are the financially motivated, and they are the hacktivist. The state-sponsor, every government that is worth to call himself a government has some elite group of hackers that they infiltrate every single big corporation or every single asset of possible adversaries. And they are the most difficult to track, to prevent that they hack you. They are the 0.5%, even less, of the hackers in the internet. Then they are the financially motivated, that sadly this is growing more and more because it has become very lucrative to be a hacker on the internet. I'm not saying that any one of you should leave your cybersecurity job and go to be a hacker, but if you do, there is money behind. And then the hacktivists, they are the people that they are doing this because they believe in something, or at least they claim that they believe in something. Then in the real world, the lines are not that clearly defined. Usually the same group might be financially motivated, but at the same time is sponsored by state, and at the same time they are claiming that they are doing this because they are good citizens and they are hacktivists. Case study. A couple of years ago, when the whole Russia-Ukraine war started, this group, Killnet, was on the news all the time. This is a representation of the boss of the team. Since I did this case study, actually the leader of the team has been doxxed, and I don't know if he's in jail now, but that was in December last year, and their activities have stopped. One of the things that said Killnet will launch powerful attacks, Europeans and American enterprise, which will indirectly lead to casualties. So just to showcase that the digital part is not just digital anymore, it has real effects, real people die on live because things that happen on the internet. Now, let's compare the kind of data that I have access to with the activities that have been reported on the news regarding the Killnet group. The spikes, so there are IoTs, indication of compromised infrastructure, that have been reported related to the Killnet group, and those are spikes on the network activity of IoT devices of the ISPs that we have access to. We have clear correlations from the IoT devices, spike on security events, and reported activity in the news. There is this one specific really big spike. These are really even more interesting because if there is nothing reported and we have this big spike there, what they were doing, which entity didn't report this. Then, these are real numbers from households remote events. For the period of a day, at least 15% of households have successful remote access connections. By successful remote access connection, I mean a connection that has been initiated on the internet towards a household, a specific device, and successfully has established a connection. 15% of 3 billion devices is a lot. What devices are usually targeted, focusing just on IoT devices. The big ones, set-top boxes, that's the typical Roku, whatever you use to watch Netflix at house. The routers, NAS storage, IP cameras is a big one. Whatever it has some kind of network connectivity are targeted. Then, what's the problem with that? Why do we care about that? If you are not in your household, why do you care? If you work in a corporation, if you work in a bank, if you work in an electric company, why do you care that the mom and pop setup box get hacked? Because of botnets. Botnets, usually in the news, we see botnets appear because of distributed denial of service. Those are the big ones that tend to go into the newspapers. But botnets is being used by the threat actors for all kinds of activity. Basically, a botnet for a threat actor is a free cloud. It's like the Amazon or Azure that you use, but for them, they have all these slew of IoT devices that easy hackable, and they use it for all kinds of things. They are used for disguise where they are located. Once they are in the network, they will use your infrastructure to perform all other kinds of attacks, to hack your network, to steal your money. And when you are working in a big corporation, and then you are trying to defend your perimeter, and attacks are coming from regular households in North America, in Europe, it's very difficult to defend against those. A typical attack, credential stuffing, you can put as a security, as a threat hunter, SOC analyst, you can put a rule that if a single source tries more than 2, 3 credentials, then just stop because there's something suspicious there. But what if you distribute that credential stuffing among 3 million different devices? How you distinguish what's real from what's a threat actor activity? So, now that we saw all this, you may think, why, if I bring a device to my house, a set-top box, why this is reachable for a hacker to attack? And that's what I was scratching my head in the end. This is because of UPnP, Universal Plug and Play. Before we go into details of problems, let's go into why it's awesome. UPnP, I don't know if many people here was around before UPnP was widely distributed, but before, if you had a home network, you basically needed to be a network engineer to make things talk to each other or talk to the internet or be able to access them through the internet. Regarding the protocol itself, before we go to the out-of-port forwarding, UPnP has many modules, and a lot of them over the year has been detected to have a lot of security problems. So without even going to the out-of-port forwarding, the protocol itself has a lot of problems that have been discovered. Just because of this, it should be decommissioned. Okay. Basic networking. I just have this here just to level up the field. How does it work? There are a limited number of IPv4 addresses, and usually you get a public IP per household, and inside of your household you might have 10,000 devices. Each one of the internal devices has a private IP, and all of them are accessed through the public IP. In the old times, if you wanted to access whatever IP camera that you had in your internal network, you needed to log in into the router and program one of these rules saying if a connection is coming to this public IP address to this specific port, then route it to this internal IP address. And that's how you would control the access from external to inside. That had the good part, that it was an intention. You had to know what you were doing. At least you had to take the effort and go and map that there. Then UPnP came and everything magically started to work. You just had to plug that in, your device into the network. The device would be clever enough to talk to the router and say, hey, I'm a new device, I'm a camera, I work with this port. Can you please, every connection that comes to you, redirect it to me? And the router would say, of course. And it would go, and it would open it, and everything would work, and everything is great, and never but ever happen again. Not true. What happened with this is awesome. It's great when things works transparently, but then this removes the user awareness. Most users don't know that this happened at all. Most users, even if they're not going to use the network capability of that device in the moment that they connected to the local network, it gets exposed to the internet and they don't know about it. Potential abuse, I wouldn't say potential. I should say that it's almost certain that it's going to be abused. And then the big one is not just UPnP, it's problematic. Is that it is enabled by default in most routers. Then, when I arrived to that realization that UPnP is enabled by default, we all, I think as a security experts, we tend to, it's this general knowledge that UPnP is enabled by default, right? Because you had the anecdotal experience that you went to your router and UPnP is enabled. But when I went to the internet trying to search for a white paper, actually saying the numbers behind this, I didn't really find anything. So I went myself and, okay, let's collect some numbers. I went two ways to collect the numbers. One through questionnaire, just directly ask people, right? The first one, just these questions, they were performed internally in my company and through social media. So it's not really fair, the numbers that we get here. It's really segregated towards security conscious people. People will, regarding the question, I made several questions, these are the two more relevant. Was the UPnP or not PnP, that's another version of another protocol that allows out-of-port forwarding, enabled at factory settings? 24% says yes, 43% said no. But what is more worrying regarding the population who answered this question, 33% said don't know. They didn't even check. And then from those, how many actually changed the setting back to no? 90% didn't, and just 10% worried. Then, another thing that I did in collaboration with Vulnerability Research Lab in Cuyo, they were gracious enough to provide me a population of firmwares from routers that the ISPs deploys in users' households. I went and actually checked configurations. This comes from 101 different firmwares from 20 different ISPs. They are mainly European. When I extracted the actual configuration from the routers, 88% of those had UPnP enabled by default, 9% disabled, and even worse, 3% had it enabled and then secure more disabled. That's a special module for UPnP that restricts a bit what kind of UPnP requests can you do. So, yeah. Okay. Again, another example why that matters. Recent UPnP fall. I don't know if how many of you were following the news. This was month and a half ago. It appeared for vulnerabilities. It were disclosed for vulnerabilities that were targeting LG WebOS TVs. These vulnerabilities, as you can see, they were marked 2023. They waited almost a year to make it publicly available, so LG have plenty of time to patch this. But what happened? In the moment that these were disclosed on the internet, you could go a place like Sudan and see that immediately 70,000 different televisions were ready and grabbed to create a new botnet. Why? Oh, why? My television needs to be available in the internet to anybody to hack it. Because LG decided to create an application that from your phone, you could remote your TV, you can control it all from your phone. But in their own wisdom, they decided that the TV also made a UPnP request to the router because the user might need to control its television from the other side of the world, because why not? Okay, now that we saw how dear the situation is, let's try to see some solutions. And here, there are solutions if you are, hopefully it's people from all kinds of backgrounds in here. If you are a developer of any new application, any new device, or you are in a board that is going to advise the security about new device, usually try to advocate either not to have remote access through the internet if it's not 100% necessary for your solution, and if that's necessary, there are other ways to do it. Because usually how they would go with why do they use UPnP? Why do they open a port on your edge router? Is the cheapest way that they can do it without expending money in cloud infrastructure. The device opens the port, then it publishes your public IP address into some dynamic DNS service. And then when you are outside of your house, then you open the application. The application does the resolution of the dynamic DNS, gets your public IP, then connects directly into your household. The problem of that is because it's allowing everybody. What you can do if you rely on cloud solutions, you can do, this is a specific example using a UID. It's not perfect, but in this scenario, this is an example of how Reolink cameras work. Your specific device has assigned a UID, and the connection is initiated from your device to the cloud environment of the service. Yes, still there is a hole, but there is not a direct door window open into your household for everybody. Still there is a single point of failure, and it could be other solutions like VPN into your house. I'm not going to go into all the different possibilities, but definitely UPnP is one of the worst. Then we go for an additional problem. First, that yes, UPnP is activated by default. This is just a couple of examples of configurations from house routers. I don't know if you noticed something here. Before that, yes, UPnP enabled by default, but surrounded that configuration point, there is nothing explaining what it's actually doing. Yes, universal plug and play supports peer-to-peer plug and play functionality for network devices. Or the other doesn't even say even that. It doesn't say something like this. This is one of the advocacy. At the very least, it should have a big red warning label. Are you 100% sure that you're going to this? Explaining exactly. I know, fear-mongering. I don't know how many people as well was around in Windows Vista time that people got tired. Warning, doing this is going to break your computer. Warning, doing this. This is not the same. This is a single thing that the user, at the very least, should be aware of what's going on. Because, yes, that's one of the main things. Okay, what's the time? Half an hour. Good, I started early. Okay, so in this slide, I wanted to make the case that automated forwarding is just bad and should be abandoned if possible. I understand the reasoning why it's there. People need things to work and make things smooth. But in the moment that you're basically allowing a random visitor in your house arriving and opening all your windows, opening your door, and leave it there because he feels like it should be that way. And the worst of that is that you don't know. For you, the doors are closed. Okay, now convenience versus security. It's a more general problem in the IT world. When you work in cybersecurity, there is the classical example. There is nothing more secure than a black box closed. You put the user inside, he gets no air, he gets no water, he's going to be perfectly safe inside doing nothing. Then the other part is that you leave that open completely, free everybody. The world is fantastic. Nobody's a threat, nobody's trying to hurt each other. You have to find a balance between making things work and making things secure. In there, we go from the point of view of IT support or security professionals. This is directly extracted from the Xbox. Microsoft frequently asks questions of what to do if your Xbox not working. Just explain in detail how you can go to your router and disable all the security that you can and enable UPnP, because it's very important to play your game, but not explaining everything that you are opening by doing this. So, going back to user visibility. When, depending on the neighborhood that you live, you put the security in your household, matching the threat that is running. If you live in a very bad neighborhood, you will put bars on your windows. You would put a big, thick door. You would put a guard dog. Maybe you could hire a security company. The thing on the internet, everybody lives on the same neighborhood. And the internet is a very, very, very shitty neighborhood. So the last thing you want to do is leave the door open, not having any security at all. And yes, just one last point regarding the visibility. Imagine typical grandfather has been all day working in his farm. It sits in front of the TV after a long day. And little does he know that that box that is sitting under the TV is doing a proxy relay for a Russian hacker that is attacking some Spanish embassy, or is consuming half of his broadband, challenging DDoS traffic that is attacking a web page that is anti-gay rights or something like this. This visibility is not there. The future, this is how things are now, but the internet is changing. New things are coming. First, if ever, I don't know, IPv6 has been promised for years. We ran out of IPv4 10 years ago, but if eventually, so just a bit of history, we talked before about IPv4, the limit amount of IPs available there. Initially, the NAT, network translation, was designed to be able to fit in a growing world, in a growing internet, that more and more devices are coming into the network. But it was never meant as a security measure. That was just an afterthought that just happened to happen. The more, if actually IPv6 will come into play, every single device is going to have their own IP. It's going to be just direct device-to-device connection. That brings into the picture firewalls. ISPs, regular routers, are going to actually have to implement at least some very basic versions of firewalls to stop all this, stop all connectivity. Every single connectivity that happens to your household has to happen with knowledge of somebody inside of the network. As well, it's coming Matter threat. This is specifically targeting IoT devices. In the end of the day, it's just going to be a separate network inside of your network, and colleagues of mine in Cuyo could tell you way more about this. But in the end, the conclusions are the same. Network security is really poor, and we have to pay attention to this. Another thing, 5G. 5G is coming. And household networks are becoming less and less relevant in certain parts of the world. So we are not even going to have an edge router to pay attention to. So having good defense, good network defense in place is very, very important. And not just for the household, but for all the corporations. The whole cybersecurity community should be pushing to reinforce the household network, because that infrastructure is being used against you. Okay, so finishing with this, almost call to action. We've been through a lot of things. Let's do a quick summary of the subjects that we touched. Internet is dangerous. Yes, internet is full of all kinds of people that is trying to benefit either from your infrastructure, your money, whatever you have to offer, they will try to take it from you. Households are very coveted resources. I don't know how many of you are in charge of your cloud cost of your company, and how expensive it is to have buckets in AWS or Azure. Imagine if you can get all that for free. I should include here a meme, about this is free real estate. It will really fit. Security disabled by default. Very sad, but yes, from one point of view, I understand that companies will try to disable security because that makes less calls to the service to support. If you connect your new Xbox, you are not really tech savvy and it doesn't work by default, you will call your ISP company, and that costs money. As well, convenience over security, that's relying on the same. And the educated users, at the very least, everybody is king of his own castle, right? But at least they should know what they are doing. They should be educated. If I open a door, I want to know that I'm opening a door. And then that the future is uncertain. We'll see what is come. It's all up to you guys. Now, a task for you depend how you are. If you're a developer, if you work for an ISP and suggesting the new security measures, I'm giving you task for every single one of you. At least in one of these points, you are going to be able to do something about it. Don't advise to lower security. We all, if you're in a forum, if you are in whatever place, your family member asks you about something, don't, by default, disable security. And if you have to, because whatever that is very important for that person is to work, at least he needs to understand what's happening. If you are working in a software or a device, put clear disclaimers and warnings when user is doing something about it. Run a firewall. I bet high percentage of you at your own house don't have a running firewall. You believe because you have NAT and you have upnp disabled is enough. No, put a proper firewall in place. Alternative for remote access, as I explained before, if you're a developer, you have your hand in something that will require access to a household, try to think of something else that is not directly port connection to the household router. If you can, never, no auto port forwarding at all. If it's necessary, go all the way, map it manually. There is the problem that the dynamic DHCP server at your home can change the IP of the specific device. Try to put that in. It's not easy, but security is not easy. And the last point, at the very least, if anything else here matters, because in the end of the day, money, there are already paths on the way. At the very least, upnp should be disabled by default. Just this little change could cut significant part of the resources that the threat actors have to work with. Conclusion, this is all up to you. I hope that I brought light to some subject that may be obvious for all of you, that you might thought about it at a certain point, but there is not enough noise about this. Talk about this, first, go to your household, check the setting, if it's enabled, disable it. Talk about this with colleagues, talk about this with whoever you believe that is necessary to talk about this too. Okay, so that was it. I hope that there is some kind of hope in the future that something might change. The cynic of me thinks not, but we will see. Okay, that's all. Any questions?
So please show your appreciation for Aurelio.